Hey everybody, welcome once again to the Road to the Procure Tech Cup. This is episode 18, and today we've got quite the show for you. Change management strategies when implementing and operating with sourcing tools. And we've got the fine folks at Keelvar to help us help educate us on this topic. So this is the show where we show you the art of the possible, and we educate you procurement pros on what's possible with digital technologies these days, and how to make you successful with them as well. So just before we get into that, a little bit of housekeeping. And if you're in the chat, let us know where you're watching from. See, we've got Corey from New York. Good morning. Thanks for being here on the live here. So we're going fast and furious until the end of the season here. So we're on the back half of it, the back third of it even. So we've got Keelvar today, speaking with Fair Market, Conversion IS, Veneering in the next couple of weeks. So we've got another 6-7 episodes ready and roaring and ready to go for you. And everything culminates April 22nd, 24th, where we've got our first annual virtual conference, 100% virtual, no travel, and all the brands that you see on screen will be there to help demo their solutions, but also educate you on like how to navigate the market, their solution category. And there'll also be some keynotes, breakout groups with people from industry. So very excited about doing that first event, and it's filling up pretty quickly. So here's kind of the details, right? April 22nd, 24th, only half days, right? So 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And it's going to be action-packed. We're co-hosting with the good folks at Connect House. So very excited as I'm seeing everything come together on our end. And if you'd like to attend, I have a QR code for you here. So make sure you take out your phone, fill out the survey that this leads you to, and I'll make sure that that you could get value from the event, right? So I'm going through each person's profile, ensuring that it's the event's a fit for you, right? So we're not going to waste your time, and it's a first come first serve basis as well. So just make sure that if you're interested, you don't wait too long, because things are starting to fill up there on that front. We've only got about 50-60 spots. I don't want to make it too big either. So that being said, what's our agenda for the call today? So we're just going to quickly touch on what is a sourcing solution, and making sure we're on the same basis, same definitions here. And then we'll go into the bulk of the discussion around what should we be thinking about from a change management standpoint as it relates to sourcing tools. And we'll have our folks from our friends from Keelvar give us their perspective on that, and have hopefully a very engaging discussion. And we'll wrap things up within the half hour here. So we'll get you on your way to a lovely weekend. So before we dive into it here, let me just get my guests online. We've got Dylan, Chief Customer Officer at Keelvar. Thank you for being here. And Martin, VP of Customer Success. How you guys doing?
Good. Thanks again for having us, Joel. So appreciate the time and looking forward to the chat today.
Yeah, Martin.
Happy Friday to everyone.
We're keeping you from the pub, aren't we?
A little bit, but happy to be here.
Thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I'm sure the folks on the call do too. All right, so let's start off here. What is a sourcing solution? So I put this map up, or my market map, every week just to get us situated before we get into the discussion. And from my perspective, the sourcing is what's highlighted there, right? So it's really, once I've got my category strategies, once I've looked at my spend, once I know how we're going to try to optimize our spend, whatever that means, right, to maximize value in our context, in our business, we execute on that plan with sourcing events, right, of all types, whether it be auctions, strategic sourcing, 3 bids and a buy on a transactional basis, etc. And so when I think about sourcing tools, I'm thinking about the tools that help me execute that in the most efficient way possible to get the actual results that I want. And then I can feed that into contracting processes, right, where that's outside of the scope, but it's where I formalize the results of what I did during my sourcing projects. So that's how I think of how sourcing fits into the ecosystem. Dylan, Martin, like, is that how you guys think about it at Keelvar as well, or is there a bit of nuance to add?
Yeah. I mean, definitely the way we look at it and what Keelvar is set out to do, we're very narrow in just that sourcing space. We just want to run those RFPs. To your point, strategic, tactical, tail, like all those are good fits for Keelvar. But, it's not an operational system, right? There's a lot of really good operational systems that are out there. There's a lot of good ERPs. There's a lot of good, purchasing systems. You're not going to do a PO through Keelvar. You're not going to pay your supplier through Keelvar. A sourcing tool that's heavily specialized like we are in that area The benefit there obviously is every dollar we get, it's going right back into sourcing, only to make sure that RFP process is really, really powerful.
Very cool. Yeah, and I'll go to the next slide here where we give kind of an overview of you guys at Keelvar and what you do. But I'm seeing more and more, and I'd love to get your take as you introduce who Keelvar is, right? But of intake management functionalities in the sourcing space as well, right? Which is a little lower on the chart here in the middle, around like making sure that requesters, as they're coming into the procurement process, like if they need to go through sourcing processes, we have that front door for them. So like, how do you guys think about that at Keelvar, right? And I'm kind of leading you into your intro as well.
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, I think like your chart showed is a good idea to think about. Like intake is not to the very beginning of the entire sourcing cycle, right? Every one of those individual steps could potentially have intake, right? Where somebody needs to start and where they need to continue on. So for us, we're really thinking about intake as intake into an RFP, right? We have rate management, we have some other tools like that can help you see that. But, we're not going from intake into a PO. We're going from intake into creating and running an RFP, finding your suppliers, executing that RFP, doing the scenario analysis and optimization, and then pushing that out to one of those other systems where you might go into contracting, you might go into those other areas. So, we do that through a few different ways. And definitely, I think the market's seen a pretty dramatic shift over the last year or two with some of the generative AI intake solutions that are out there. I use all those generative AI tools myself. So candidly, like I expect that from the tools that I use. So Keelvar has a few different ways to intake things into our system. So because like I said at the beginning, we are super, super narrow in that sourcing space. We know that we have to play really well with all those other providers, like some of them you have on other webinars here too as well. We want to integrate with those people. We want Keelvar to be part of that, build your own suite of these different best in class vendors that are very specialized in their area. So we're really, really strong on intake through digital connections and through APIs. Like today, 75 to 80% of the events that go through Keelvar come in through an API. So, there's already massive volume happening there. And then for the people that aren't connected that way, there's usually one of two ways. We have our traditional customers that know what they want. They don't need a chat bot to kind of tell them what to do or walk through it. Like, they want to just be able to go in and drag and drop their bid sheet and create an RFP and be off to the races. We've got that as well. That works great for some of those really super users that are, used to running sourcing optimization. Very common logistics, packaging, MRO, those kind of categories where people have been doing that. But as we move outside of that, then the generative AI agents can help a lot. And that's where we've got Kai, which is kind of our AI orchestrator that helps people that don't have tons of familiarity with Keelvar, that aren't trained in Keelvar, that don't want to sit through the trainings of Keelvar, even though they're really great. And we put a lot of effort into them. If you're not using Keelvar all the time, you're going to forget anyways. So we've got Kai there to really help you create a best-in-class RFP without having to press all the buttons. Even if you upload a PDF or documents, we can create your RFP from that and build a best-in-class Keelvar RFP right out of the gates without you having to know. And that's where Kai can also direct you to, is this a better fit for autonomous sourcing? Is it a better fit for sourcing optimization, rate management, and going to the integration? So it's a really cool tool that we've added this year.
Yeah, and hearing you talk, right, I'm going like, even when you're looking at a sourcing tool, regardless of which one it is, right, it's like having all those different entry points and then adapting it to your context, right? So you can log into the tool straight up, but it is part of a wider process. And so if you have intake and orchestration or, a procurement platform that you're using for the rest of the process, you need to have a tool that allows you to like stitch it into the process, so to speak, right? In the different ways that's needed. So I think that's probably the most important one, or what I was trying to get at with my question too, right? So, but thanks I think that gives a good overview.
And
it's very different depending on, go ahead, Martin, sorry.
No, I wanted to say kind of to segue us into the conversation of change management that we have today, kind of building on what Dylan says with intake and orchestration and Kai and AI. Like my main point today is, if you actually need a large change management strategy, you don't have the right tool. Like you have, obviously, change management is important, and we'll talk about all of that. It's all the methods, everything that needs to go into that is super important. But if you don't have the right tool and you don't go through the preparation, you will fail. So it is essential that when you are selecting the tool, but also when you are preparing for the rollout, that you do the work before. And like first step for that is understanding, okay, what are the drivers? Like, what do you want to achieve? With Dylan spoke about intake and integrate solutions. So that, like, to me, it speaks towards sourcing maturity. Like, is your process mature enough to go directly into an automated solution? Fantastic. You don't need change management. Isn't that the case? And you are trying kind of to expand the spend you are sourcing and the spend you are managing. You will need people and you will need buyers who are using the tool. So that dictates, okay, I actually need to enable a couple of people and I need to make sure they're up to speed and they know what they are doing. And same goes for the pipeline. Like, am I onboarding one category? Am I onboarding a whole company? What is the scope? So like for me, in change management, it's super important to understand what am I trying to achieve before I start planning. And we'll talk about all the individual aspects of it, right? But I think change management essentially starts before you even have an adoption plan and plan how and to whom you will talk. And will use ADKAR or 7Ss or whatever. Right tool and a plan what you want to achieve is key to that.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is like, what's the decisions that you can make that eliminate 1,000 change management decisions, right? Like, how can you structure? Because we've talked about like scope and architecture and deployment planning and other versions of the show or editions of the show. But I feel like what you're saying is like, if you get those right, then the gap that you need to fill with change management to get the adoption that you want ultimately and the results is smaller, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
You are absolutely correct. And like, if you think about the tools you are using privately to buy stuff, like there was no change management. There was no training involved. It's intuitive. It helps you to do the job, and all sourcing tools and all tools that you are buying need to follow the same strategy, right? And it's partially on UX, of course. Like that's what we do at Keelvar, but it's also about, as I mentioned, thinking, okay, do I have the right data at the right time in the tool? Have I thought of the integrations that I need to do? And it all starts before change management.
And that, I think, is probably a good segue into, you talked about data. It's a good segue into these quick wins, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of how we look at change management at Keelvar. And Dylan, I guess you would agree, like one of the benefits of a sourcing tool is that the time to value is very quick. Like if you are implementing a spend analytics tool or a catalog tool, it takes longer. With a sourcing tool, you can start on day 2, right? Get the event into the tool, invite the suppliers, get the savings, have instant ROI. So you are winning right away. And that kind of speaks about why there are quick wins in change management, how we think about it. You will see that our view is always agile, like learn about how it goes. And the reason I'm calling it quick wins is it can be instant. First point on that is it's very important to remove all the friction for the people who need to work with the tool. And in some organizations, you still have to request access to it. Am I allowed to use this system? There's no reason for that.
Yeah.
Like you have to have a tool, you have single sign-on, you go into the tool, you don't have to request, you're added into the right group, you're good to go. Second aspect of it is, I like to call it familiar context, right? You need to understand what I'm finding in the tool, I already know. I have the right data for my sourcing tool that I need to run because it was triggered from an integration and I already have my suppliers in and I already have my items in and I'm good to go. I don't need to get familiar about, hey, where do I bring my stuff over into the system? So it's very important to think about, as the service owner, preparing for the rollout, how do I make the journey of a user easy? Because that's ultimately the next step on the quick wins. That's how you earn stuff. I always spoke about familiar context. That's exactly what we are talking about. You have the templates that you are used to have. You have the agents that do the work you used to do, and you find the right information when you need them at the right time.
And is it like and Dylan, I'll want your perspective, right? What I'm thinking, like the way I visualize it is you're essentially building a store whenever you're deploying one of these solutions, And if you don't do that, if you don't do the effort of bringing the data in, and I think that's where it's hard in the implementation, right? So sometimes we're like, oh, let's just start with an empty box. But if you don't do that work of bringing the vendor data in, the templates, etc., and making it familiar, then it's kind of like opening up an empty store, right? And people walk in and they go, oh, what, there's nothing to buy here.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, at least for me and probably a lot of people on the call, even the first time you opened up Excel, right, and looked at Excel and it was just this blank sheet of grid lines and you said, what the heck is this? Or if you're a little bit older, maybe Microsoft Access, but like, if it'd be so different if the first time I opened up Excel, it had like my RFP template already in there. Okay, now I get it. I kind of see how this all works versus being totally blank. And I'm somebody that struggles a lot with just that blank slate problem in general. Like if I'm looking at something and there's nothing there, even if it's the most powerful solution ever, like sometimes I don't know what to do as a next step. So having those templates and doing a little bit of that work up front to bring in, like you said, bring in their vendors, give them their templates, stuff that they are used to using. It does drive a lot of familiarity. I think, like Martin said, is a good way to describe it. That reduces the friction that we mentioned in that first piece. To me, that friction piece is the biggest thing that I'm always worried about. And I think, Joel, you made a good comment earlier about like stitching it into different areas. Different stakeholders are going to have very different strategies for how we need to approach this, right? I've got some stakeholders that I never go to Keelvar at all, right? We meet them where they work. They're working in their ERP, they're working in their TMS, whatever it might be, and they're running 60 RFPs a day, and they're not going to Keelvar at all. That's really easy for change management. They just work in their existing tool that they're used to. So that the API integration there is a way to remove friction. And then to Martin's point on those other users that are going to be in there, bringing them along the journey too to help build those templates together. Yeah, that'll help remove the friction as well. And I'm definitely a huge believer in what Martin said of like, if you can get some quick wins right out of the gates, that brings the whole ROI for the whole program. And those are really powerful stories as we start to expand it to everybody else. If the story is, hey, we just saved your buddy over here $20 million on his MRO RFP, are you interested in saving $20 million? Like, okay, that's a way better story than, hey, in 3 years, we're going to have a really cool look at our data and it's going to be really nice versus like, hey, it's already working. We're already winning. Let's keep going.
And like Martin alluded to that same thing earlier, right? I was going to say like sourcing is kind of unique in that sense, right? So contrary to doing change management and other projects, like you can go and pay for the whole implementation, or like the payback can be done in 1 or 2 sourcing events with a very small scope of people at the beginning, right? And so thinking very small but high impact in a sourcing context can give you that, that bucket of water to put on the wheel so that the change management can do itself. And the other thing that it gives you is it gives you that time, right? And that budget to say like, hey, okay, we have the pressure of ROI off our back now. Now we can actually focus on adoption and change management and making sure that we're thinking about the different user groups and their needs and their, how they view the world and how we're going to change the messaging of how we deliver this thing to them so that adoption, they go through their IDCAR journey, as you were referring to earlier, Martin, right? Do you guys experience that in your implementations?
Yeah. I mean, and I'll let Martin talk, but I mean, the biggest thing I think about it is it's a tangible results right out of the gates. 3 months in, we pay for the 3-year project, right? Like, that's how fast we're talking. It's real. It's hitting the bottom line of the company immediately. So that definitely unlocks a lot of gates for us as we go forward. But yeah, Martin, you've got tons of experience. So.
And that ultimately kind of speaks towards the third point here, and that's creating advocates, right? Because when you need change management, you need advocates on both sides. Like you need the executive buy-in, you need the sponsor who will go in there and explain this is the change we are making, this is why we made the decision, and this is why we are bringing in a new tool. And it's a lot easier if you can show the executive lead, hey, you already have success, you already paid for the project, you can be proud standing behind it and talking about it. And obviously on the other side, like you need stakeholders and you need champions that want to own the work and want to become heroes, like roll up the sleeves and do the work, get the 20 million savings Dylan was talking about, and repeat. And that's why it's so important to have those right away. And you're absolutely right to start moving on. It kind of speaks towards how we approach the entire thing. And I said in the beginning, like that there are aspects of change management that are super important. And probably spoke about on the show about the 7 S's before, and ADKAR, and bringing on individuals on the journey and having them excited. All of that is absolutely valid. And if you consider what we spoke about before is like the biggest impact we have seen, and to be honest, we have learned from the experiences. There is no big bang change management. It always needs iteration. It always needs to follow an iterative, agile approach. Obviously, you like if you're rolling out in a big organization, you need sort of a big bang to a degree, but it's never everyone at the same time at once, because you need to learn from smaller groups. And that's why like our approach is, okay, get in, get the first success, get the time to value, get the 20 million savings, get the buy-in, and then repeat. In terms of steps, it's kind of a summary of what we've been talking about here. Like really the first step is understanding what you need to do to remove the friction and build trust. So like identify the as-is process. What are you doing today? What are the data sources? What are the templates people are using? Where are they going? Where are they getting the master data from? How can I make it as easy for them as possible? So I need to map the as-is process, and of course, out of that, the to-be. Simple as that. Where am I? Where do I need to go? And what do I need to change considering the technology? If you're bringing in a tool like Keelvar, using orchestration, using agentic sourcing, using automation, never automate a bad process. Always think about what is as is and how it should be. Second step is build it, right? Like give the people who will start using it the context so they get familiar. So have those agents, have those automations, have those integrations ready. So when the user logs in, it's not a blank canvas that Dylan was talking about, that they find the templates that they have. And with it, it's like launch and happy days, right? Have the users in, have them run the first events, have them have the success, show them the quick time to value, show them the ROI. And it's the important piece. Show it, talk about it, and that will allow you to scale it. Essentially, run the 4 steps and then repeat on a larger scale with another group. Is it the region? Is it the department? Is it the category? Really depends on your organization, right? Like there's no right or wrong to that. That's where all the techniques of change management come in place, where you need to figure out what is the best approach for your organization.
And I feel like, this slide kind of, we referred to it earlier, but it doesn't do justice that this can be done relatively quickly with a very small user group, right? And then the bulk of the work is in those 2 circles, right? In terms of like redeploying, so to speak, or deploying it out to, as you mentioned, different geographies, different teams, different categories, but giving yourself the time to do that kind of hockey stick adoption curve, right? And why I say in sourcing, you guys have an advantage is like, even though the adoption needs to be this way in any category, like you can get the ROI from that really small group of users and projects at the very start, right? Is that fair?
That is absolutely fair, and also fair comment. It doesn't give it justice kind of to the speed, because like speed of this entire flow is essential, right? Time to value is a metric that is super important for change management as it is, because if it drags on for months, you will lose momentum and you will lose the people. So we are not talking about month-long deployment. We are talking about days or weeks to get people up to speed and get to the first success. And of course, the entire process can take a couple of months when you go through the entire organization, but time to value is a metric to have in mind when you are talking about deploying a new tool and change management, because that inevitably shows you remove the friction and you got success right away.
Mm-hmm. And I think we had. Oh no, we didn't have anything you wanted to add, Dylan? Apologies, I thought we had one more slide here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Martin gave a lot of really great points there. I mean, I challenge everybody to think about it in 2 different ways as well. There's the organizational change management, and then there's the personal change management. It's 2 kind of different angles that you got to take, and 2 different ways that we got to approach it. For the personal change management, I mean, we're having to, and everyone is having to resell the entire model to every single person one by one sometimes, right? To really convince them and explain to them why they're making this change and go through, yeah, like that ad card process you mentioned, but helping them kind of get over that hurdle. And that's why Martin mentioned, yeah, some of those internal champions and building those success stories can really help as we go on to sell to the next person and explain it to them. Versus the organizational piece is more about, process, systems, controls. How do we build it into the governance model? How do we give people the access to it? Where are we connecting the APIs? So there's two very different tracks there that take, I think very different approaches that have to happen. It needs to be very customized to each company, each region, each category, each stakeholder sometimes. So that does take some work there. But yeah, like I think we've said here a few times, the more tangible we can make the results and the faster we can bring those results, definitely lifts a lot of burden off of everybody to know that, this does really work. There can be success here. And we've had a lot of success with some customers that as we've taken them on that change management journey. Even some customers that, we had been working with for a while, reinvested in some change management with them, and they were doing 10x the number of RFPs the next month, literally. So, and that's sustained through now. So there's always room, like Martin said, to continue to do it. It's not a one-shot process. It is iterative, but we can drive some really good results with people.
And to that point, Dylan, like you guys are coming out with new functionalities over time as well, right? And so is every other sourcing tool provider, right? So there is the ability to say like, hey, even if you have deployed everybody and you're done your program or the initial scope that you have, like there's potentially opportunity to like do another loop, right?
Oh yeah.
And like a couple.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's our intention, is that it will continue to get better. You will continue to save more time. You will continue to save more money. So that's, what challenge us to continue to do that. But yeah, like we're, like I said at the beginning, I've got 50 people working in engineering and they're only building sourcing. They're not spread across, you showed that whole 7-step sourcing process, they're not spread across that. So we're constantly innovating in that space, doing literally 250 releases a week. So there's always time for change management. But I mean, Martin made a really good point. The less friction we make with that change management, the easier it is, though. If you make it so easy to use that people want to do it, a lot easier.
Yeah. And that may be just a personal question because of what you said and personal curiosity, right? Around if you're shipping 250 changes a week, right? Whether they're bug fixes or improvements or what have you, right? Are you trying to think about like, I always give Teams as an example, right? Like I just log into Teams and there's new stuff, right? And like I just kind of, it's organically people can use it, right? Is that how you guys think about it as well?
Yeah, it's a mix of that. Like a lot of it is, hey, organic, partly because people don't want to get 250 emails a week with every single thing that we tell them. So even though I personally would, a lot of our customers don't want that. So some of it has to be organic, but we've got a lot of cool like digital adoption tools in app that when you get to the right area tells you, hey, you should check out this new feature. Sometimes there's banners in app, new features like we just released, like integrations into Adobe Sign so people can automatically actually sign like contracts, NDAs and stuff like that through the tool. Some stuff like we'll send out a big email blast to let people know about like big features that we really want them to use that they've been asking for. So it's always a mix of that of, hey, let people kind of discover it versus challenging them to go try it out.
Yeah. And maybe I'd leave that thought with folks as we end the show here around like how you guys think about change management, like pushing new stuff out to your clients, your customers that are using the solution. I challenge like procurement teams to think the same way about the people that are using the tools internally, right? How do we use communities and bulletin boards, newsletters, and all this media stuff to essentially do change management continuously when we want to keep improving how we use our solutions on after the projects are done or after the programs are done. So I find that's a good parallel to draw.
Yeah, I didn't think we didn't know we were all working in marketing and change management, but surprise, enjoy your job.
Yeah. I would say
with any extra pay.
If you work in procurement, you work in sales.
Oh yeah.
Increasingly. Cool. Well, thanks so much, guys, for coming on the show. I think there was a lot of nuggets there in our discussion. As always, if you're watching the show, you're not subscribed to the newsletter that comes out every Sunday night, I strongly encourage you to do so. We share all sorts of stuff, not just invites to the show, but articles, jobs, must read links, and we have a lot of fun in the ecosystem. And I know you guys also prepared something. I've seen this asset. I know it's great, but I'd love for you to tee it up and let us know where we can meet you guys as well or follow you guys.
Yeah, sure. So this is the Autonomous Sourcing Cookbook. I mean, the goal of this was to kind of make this very nebulous idea of autonomous sourcing approachable to people in a way that you can really translate it. So, it's set up like a recipe book. What are the kind of ingredients you need if you want to create an autonomous sourcing agent? What data do you need? How do you kind of set it up? What are the things you need to prepare? So we've got, 10 or 15, I think, examples of real categories, exactly how they would be set up, visualizations for you to see how you would set it up. So you could actually think about, hey, if I wanted to do this tomorrow in my business, what does it really look like? So trying to make this a little bit more real, a little bit more tangible for people instead of everything as this magic agentic AI that lives in a black box. But hopefully this lets you see how it works a little bit more.
Yeah. And what I loved most about this app, well, there's two things, right? The first one was that it's a cookbook that, yes, is Keelvar specific, but in my mind, I read it and I'm going, I could apply this to any tooling that I'm using, right? In terms of the business logic. And then the second thing was that, I think I spoke to Alan, your CEO at the time, and he said, oh, we're going to keep like adding more stuff to it, right?
Yeah.
So
there's a version 2 coming, so get ready.
There you go. So if you checked that out in the past, make sure you're keeping tabs on it so that you get new recipes and impress your friends at dinner. So thanks, Dylan, Martin, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Especially Martin. I know it's getting late. We could see it behind you. And for everybody who's watching, thanks so much for tuning in. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having us.